It is Tank Davis Fight Week, and I am so excited. We're going to have a full preview of that fight coming up on Friday. But today, I thought we would look at the other big fights that have been announced or are coming up here. And the next big fight is Shakur Stevenson fighting on July 6th on ESPN. It's the next big fight in the sport leading up to Terence Crawford's LA by way of Saudi fight coming up at the beginning of August. But this is a big fight when it comes to the fight that we're going to be dealing with this weekend. We are all under the assumption that Tank Davis is going to win this fight against Frank Martin. And if he doesn't, then we have bigger conversations to be had. But if this weekend goes the way that we would expect, and then July 6th goes the way we would expect that to go as well, then I would imagine by the time 2024 is wrapping up, or we get into quarter one of 2025, we're going to be seeing Shakur Stevenson getting punched in the head by Tank Davis and doing the punching as well. I think that these two are on a collision course right now at lightweight, and I think that this is another in a long line of big fights that we would be able to get in this sport, should the results over the next little bit play out. But Shakur Stevenson having another fight on ESPN, I have found my journey with Stevenson to be interesting at times because he's always had so much potential, and he never has the big fights that you want him to have, and he never has the big performances against the not quite as big fights that you wish that he would. But you can see there are flashes and there are times where the talent is just screaming at you that this is one of the most talented fighters we have in the sport right now. And so a win July 6th, I think, sets him up for a bout with Tank Davis at the end of the year or into next year, and gives us a true read on Shakur's talent and another really big fight for one of the biggest names in the sport. Speaking of big fights, Usyk Fury 2 will be taking place in December in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This really was, I know we did fights to make coming off of it, and I made a couple of suggestions. This was the fight to make. With how contentious the scoring was, not necessarily mine, but with how contentious the scoring was, how close that fight was, and how important it is for this generation in the heavyweight division, this was the only fight to make. And I'm going to be so intrigued at what this bout looks like rounds 13 on now, to see what type of a fight we get. What type of adjustments does Fury make? What type of adjustments can he make? What type of adjustments are there from Oleksandr Usyk as well? What did he learn from those middle rounds that he not only took with him into the back part of the fight, but also now can take with him into Riyadh coming up in December? After this, though, one of the reasons why this also makes sense, is no one has really stepped up as that true contender. Anthony Joshua has won some fights, and so but I just don't want to see him against Usyk again. That book is closed for me. Zhang gets a good win over Wilder, but does that give you a title shot? I mean, maybe. But it certainly doesn't trump this one. And so we said before in the fights to make after Zhang beat Wilder that I think Zhang versus Joshua, if Joshua doesn't want to wait for a Tyson Fury fight, I think that fight makes the most sense. I've been saying before, you do a bit of a heavyweight bracket, you do run the risk, and honestly, the very likely scenario of Usyk beating Fury, Joshua beating Zhang. It's well, I don't really want to see that. And so the perfect one coming out of this, I think, would be Usyk against Zhang and Joshua facing Fury. It's a fight that hasn't happened in this era. Maybe it is a little bit past its prime, but I still would get really, really excited about that. And then Joshua Fury. But it's going to be, it's always interesting in boxing. That is for sure.